I stood in my medical clinic at 2 in the morning, staring at the legal documents scattered across my desk. My hands trembled as I read the lawsuit filed by my own sister, claiming she deserved half ownership of everything I had built from nothing. The clinic that had consumed 7 years of my life, every dollar I had earned, and countless sleepless nights, was now being torn apart by the very people who had called me selfish for pursuing my dreams. The betrayal cut deeper than any scalpel ever could. Before we dive into how my own family tried to destroy everything I worked for, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like button if you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted. Make sure to subscribe because this story has twists that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. My name is Madison Reeves, and I have always been the black sheep of my family. While my sister Victoria pursued her passion for art and my brother Marcus focused on his music career, I was the one with my nose buried in medical textbooks. My parents, Helen and Robert Reeves, had always made it clear that they considered my ambitions unrealistic and expensive. When I announced my intention to become a doctor at 17, my father actually laughed and suggested I consider nursing instead. The road to becoming a physician was brutal. I worked 3 part-time jobs throughout college to pay for my education, while my siblings received full financial support for their creative pursuits. Victoria got her art studio funded, Marcus received top-of-the-line music equipment, and I got lectures about being practical. Every semester, I had to fight for every dollar, every meal, every textbook. My family never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was wasting money on an impossible dream. Medical school was even worse. The tuition alone was astronomical, and my family refused to co-sign any loans. They claimed they had already spent too much on my undergraduate degree and needed to save money for Victoria's gallery showings and Marcus's recording equipment. I remember calling my mother in tears during my second year, begging for just $2,000 to cover my rent so I would not have to drop out. Her response still haunts me. Maybe this is the universe telling you to choose a more reasonable career path, Madison. I proved them all wrong through sheer determination and sacrifice. I graduated medical school with honors, completed my residency in family medicine, and decided to open my own practice. The idea of working for someone else after fighting so hard for independence felt wrong. I wanted to create something that was entirely mine, a place where I could help people without corporate interference or bureaucratic nonsense. Finding the perfect location took months of searching. The building I finally chose was a rundown former dental office in a growing suburban area. The space was perfect, but it needed complete renovation. The previous owner had left it in terrible condition, with outdated equipment, peeling paint, and a broken HVAC system. Most people would have walked away, but I saw potential. I spent every weekend for 6 months gutting that building with my own hands. I learned how to install drywall paint walls and even do basic electrical work through YouTube videos and sheer determination. The physical labor was exhausting, but it was also therapeutic. Every nail I hammered and every wall I painted represented my independence from a family that had never believed in me. The financial aspect was the most challenging part of the entire process. Banks were reluctant to lend money to a new physician with student loan debt, especially one without family financial backing. I was rejected by 7 different lenders before finally finding a community bank willing to work with me. Even then, I had to put down a substantial down payment that drained my savings account completely. I furnished the clinic piece by piece, often buying used equipment and refurbishing it myself. The waiting room chairs came from an office liquidation sale. The reception desk was built from reclaimed wood I found at a construction site, and the examination tables were purchased from a retiring physician 3 states away. Every single item in that clinic represented hours of research negotiation and careful budgeting. During this entire process, my family was notably absent. When I invited them to see the construction progress, Victoria was always too busy with her art projects. Marcus had recording sessions, and my parents claimed they were too busy with work. The few times they did visit, they spent the entire time pointing out problems and expressing doubt about my chances of success. The grand opening was both the proudest and loneliest day of my life. I had invited my entire family, sent them beautiful invitations, and even arranged for catering. Victoria showed up 2 hours late and spent most of her time taking selfies for social media. Marcus never came at all, claiming he had forgotten about it. My parents arrived on time but left early, saying they had dinner plans they could not cancel. Despite their lack of support, the clinic was an immediate success. Within 6 months, I had a full patient roster and was considering hiring additional staff. The community embraced the practice, and I was finally making enough money to pay my loans and live comfortably. For the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely proud of what I had accomplished. That success, however, seemed to awaken something ugly in my family. Suddenly, the same people who had called my dreams unrealistic were very interested in my business. Victoria started making comments about how lucky I was to have such a successful practice. Marcus began asking detailed questions about my income and business model. My parents, who had refused to invest a single dollar in my education or business, started giving me unsolicited advice about expansion and marketing. The first red flag came when Victoria suggested that I should hire her to design marketing materials for the clinic. She claimed that my current branding was amateur and that her artistic expertise could help me attract more upscale clients. When I politely declined and explained that I was happy with my current marketing approach, she became visibly upset and accused me of not supporting family. Marcus was next with his proposal. He wanted to create a custom soundtrack for the clinic's waiting room and suggested that I pay him a monthly licensing fee for the music. When I pointed out that I could simply use a standard music service for a fraction of the cost, he accused me of being cheap and not appreciating his talent. My parents were the most subtle, but also the most persistent. They started visiting the clinic regularly, not as patients, but to observe the operation. They would sit in the waiting room, chat with my staff, and ask probing questions about appointment scheduling, billing procedures, and patient volume. When I asked them about their sudden interest in my business, they claimed they were simply proud of my success and wanted to understand how everything worked. The situation escalated when my father suggested that I incorporate the clinic and bring the family in as silent partners. He presented it as a way to protect my assets and share the financial burden of expansion. When I asked what they would contribute to justify partnership stakes, the conversation became uncomfortable. Victoria suggested that her artistic vision and Marcus's musical talents were valuable assets that deserved compensation. I realized that my family saw my success as an opportunity for their own financial gain, rather than the result of years of hard work and sacrifice. The clinic that I had built with my own hands and financed with my own credit was suddenly being viewed as a family asset that should be shared equally among all of us. The transformation in my family's attitude became more obvious with each passing week. What started as casual interest quickly evolved into a full-scale campaign to insert themselves into every aspect of my business. The clinic that they had once dismissed as a foolish venture was now being discussed as if it were a family inheritance they had always been entitled to share. Victoria was the most aggressive in her approach. She began showing up at the clinic unannounced, claiming she was just dropping by to say hello, but always managing to corner my staff with suggestions for improvements. She would critique the artwork on the walls, rearrange furniture in the waiting room, and even attempt to redesign the reception area layout. My office manager, Sarah, finally pulled me aside to express her discomfort with Victoria's constant interference. The situation with Victoria reached a breaking point when she brought a portfolio of her artwork to display in the clinic without asking permission. She had apparently been working on a series of medical-themed paintings that she felt would be perfect for a healthcare setting. The paintings were abstract interpretations of human anatomy that, while artistically interesting, were completely inappropriate for a family medicine clinic. When I gently explained that I preferred the current neutral decor, she exploded. "You have always been jealous of my artistic talent," Victoria screamed loud enough for patients in the waiting room to hear. "You cannot stand the idea of showcasing anyone else's success in your precious little clinic. This is exactly why our family has problems with you, Madison. You are selfish and controlling." I was mortified that she had created a scene in front of my patients, but I was even more disturbed by her accusation that our family had problems with me. This was the first time anyone had openly admitted that there were ongoing family discussions about my supposed character flaws. The revelation that my family was apparently holding regular conversations about my shortcomings was both hurtful and infuriating. Marcus took a different but equally invasive approach. He started appearing at the clinic during lunch hours with his guitar, claiming he wanted to provide live music for patients in the waiting room. While some patients initially found it charming, it quickly became disruptive to the clinical environment. Children would become overly excited, elderly patients complained about the noise level, and the music interfered with confidential phone conversations at the reception desk. When I asked Marcus to stop these impromptu concerts, he accused me of stifling his creativity and claimed that I was embarrassed by his artistic pursuits. He suggested that my real issue was jealousy over his musical talent, and that I was trying to sabotage his career by denying him performance opportunities. The conversation revealed a level of resentment and entitlement that I had never fully recognized before. My parents were more sophisticated in their manipulation tactics. They began inviting potential investors to family dinners and introducing them as people interested in healthcare opportunities. These dinners always included detailed discussions about my clinic's success, patient volume, and future expansion possibilities. My parents would speak about the business as if they had been involved from the beginning, using phrases like, "our family clinic," and "Madison's practice that we all support." The most disturbing part of these dinner conversations was how my parents portrayed their relationship with my business. They would tell stories about providing guidance and support during the early days, conveniently omitting the fact that they had actively discouraged my medical career and refused to provide any financial assistance. They painted themselves as wise mentors who had helped shape my success rather than obstacles I had overcome. When I confronted my parents about these misrepresentations, they claimed they were simply being supportive and trying to help me network with potential business partners. My father suggested that I was being ungrateful for their efforts to promote my practice within their social circle. My mother added that successful business owners always needed family support and that I should appreciate their willingness to help me grow. The situation escalated dramatically when my father presented me with a formal business proposal during what I thought was a casual family dinner. He had apparently been working with a lawyer to draft partnership agreements that would give each family member a 20% stake in the clinic. The remaining 20% would stay with me as the managing partner, but all major business decisions would require family consensus. The proposal was presented as a way to ensure the clinic's long-term success and provide financial security for the entire family. My father explained that Victoria's artistic expertise could enhance the clinic's aesthetic appeal. Marcus's musical talents could create a calming environment for patients, and my parents' business experience could guide strategic decisions. In exchange for these contributions, each family member would receive an equal share of profits and have voting rights on important business matters. When I asked what financial investment each family member would make to justify their ownership stakes, the conversation became tense. My father claimed that their contributions would be in the form of expertise and ongoing support rather than cash investments. Victoria pointed out that her artwork would increase the clinic's property value, and Marcus suggested that his musical contributions would enhance patient satisfaction scores. I was stunned by the audacity of the proposal. My family was essentially asking me to give away 80% of a business I had built entirely with my own money, time, and effort. They wanted equal ownership without equal investment, equal profits without equal risk, and equal decision-making power without equal responsibility. When I declined their proposal, the family's reaction was swift and harsh. Victoria accused me of being greedy and selfish, claiming that successful people always share their wealth with family members. Marcus suggested that I had forgotten my roots and become too proud to accept help from the people who raised me. My parents were the most hurtful, expressing disappointment that I had become the type of person who valued money more than family relationships. The emotional manipulation was sophisticated and relentless. They used every family gathering phone call and text message as an opportunity to pressure me into reconsidering their proposal. They would bring up childhood memories of family togetherness, remind me of times when they had supported me, and suggest that my refusal to share my success was damaging our relationships. The pressure campaign included other family members as well. My aunt started calling to express concern about family unity. My grandmother sent guilt-inducing letters about the importance of family loyalty, and even family friends began making comments about successful people who never forgot their families. What made the situation even more frustrating was how they portrayed my position to others. Instead of acknowledging that they were asking for ownership stakes without financial investment, they framed the conflict as my unwillingness to let family members help with the business. They told extended family and friends that I was being stubborn and refusing to accept assistance, making me appear ungrateful and selfish. The final straw came when I discovered that my father had been contacting my business lawyer and accountant, claiming he needed information for tax purposes. He had apparently told both professionals that he was a family representative helping with business planning and had requested detailed financial statements and legal documents. When my lawyer called to confirm the legitimacy of these requests, I realized that my family's interest in my business had crossed the line from annoying to potentially harmful. The discovery that my father had been attempting to access my confidential business information marked a turning point in what had been an increasingly uncomfortable family situation. What I had initially dismissed as typical family dynamics and minor boundary issues was clearly something much more serious and calculated. The realization that my own family was conducting what amounted to corporate espionage against my business was both shocking and infuriating. I immediately contacted both my lawyer and accountant to implement additional security measures for my business information. We established new protocols requiring written authorization from me personally before releasing any documents or discussing any aspects of my business with third parties, including family members. My lawyer also suggested that I document all interactions with family members regarding business matters, as their behavior was becoming increasingly inappropriate. The conversation with my father about his unauthorized information requests was one of the most difficult discussions I had ever had with a parent. When I confronted him directly about contacting my professional advisors, he initially denied any wrongdoing and claimed he was simply trying to understand my business better. When I presented him with specific details about his conversations with my lawyer, his story changed to claims that he was trying to help me organize my affairs more efficiently. His final explanation was the most disturbing. He suggested that as my father, he had a natural right to understand his daughter's financial situation and business operations. He claimed that successful families always shared financial information transparently, and that my desire for privacy was evidence of either poor business practices or lack of trust in my family. The entitlement in his voice was unmistakable and deeply troubling. My mother's response to the confrontation was equally concerning, but took a different approach. Instead of defending the information gathering, she focused on emotional manipulation and guilt tactics. She expressed hurt feelings that I would accuse my father of improper behavior and suggested that my suspicions were evidence of how much I had changed since achieving success. According to her, the old Madison would never have suspected her family of having ulterior motives. Victoria and Marcus rallied around our parents with a unified message that I was becoming paranoid and controlling. They organized what they called a family intervention, inviting me to dinner to discuss my concerning behavior and attitude toward family members. The intervention was presented as an opportunity for healing and honest communication, but it quickly became clear that the real purpose was to pressure me into accepting their original partnership proposal. The intervention dinner was one of the most surreal experiences of my adult life. My family had prepared a list of my supposed character defects and behavioral problems that they wanted to address. Victoria led the discussion with accusations that I had become arrogant and materialistic since opening the clinic. She claimed that my success had gone to my head and that I now considered myself superior to the rest of the family. Marcus contributed his own analysis of my personality changes, suggesting that I had developed a controlling nature that was damaging our family relationships. He pointed out that I no longer sought family input on important decisions, and that I seemed to value financial independence more than family unity. According to Marcus, my refusal to include family members in my business decisions was evidence of deep-seated selfishness. My parents presented themselves as concerned and loving family members who were simply trying to help me recognize how much I had changed. They suggested that my suspicions about their motives were symptoms of stress and isolation caused by working too much. They recommended that I consider therapy to address my trust issues and learn how to maintain healthy family relationships while managing a successful business. The most manipulative aspect of the intervention was how they framed their partnership proposal as a solution to my personal problems rather than a business opportunity. They suggested that sharing ownership and decision-making responsibility would reduce my stress levels and help me reconnect with family values. They portrayed their desire for ownership stakes as a selfless attempt to support me, rather than an effort to profit from my hard work. When I attempted to point out the financial realities of their proposal, they dismissed my concerns as evidence of my fixation on money. Victoria suggested that my focus on financial contributions demonstrated how materialism had corrupted my priorities. Marcus added that true family members should not need to pay for the privilege of helping each other succeed. The intervention reached its climax when my father presented what he called a final offer. The family would agree to reduce their ownership demands to 15% each, leaving me with 40% controlling interest. In exchange for this generosity, I would need to agree to hire Victoria as the clinic's marketing director, Marcus as the official music therapist, and my mother as the office manager. My father would serve as the business consultant and financial advisor. This revised proposal was even more outrageous than the original because it would have placed my entire family on my payroll while giving them ownership stakes and decision-making power. They would receive salaries for jobs they were unqualified to perform, profit sharing as owners, and voting rights on business decisions. Meanwhile, I would retain less than half ownership of a business I had created entirely through my own efforts and investment. My rejection of this final offer triggered the most aggressive phase of their campaign. Victoria began spreading rumors in our social circle that I had become impossible to work with and was alienating family members who only wanted to help. She told friends and extended family members that I was struggling with the stress of running a business and was making poor decisions that could harm the family's financial security. Marcus took his complaints public by posting on social media about family members who forget their roots after achieving success. While he never mentioned me by name, the posts were clearly directed at our situation and designed to generate sympathy for his position. Friends and family members began reaching out to me with concerns about the family conflict and suggestions for reconciliation. My parents escalated their pressure campaign by involving extended family members and family friends in their efforts to change my mind. They began hosting regular dinners and social gatherings where the conversation always turned to my situation and their concerns about my behavior. These events became opportunities for collective pressure and emotional manipulation disguised as loving concern. The most shocking development came when I discovered that my family had been researching the legal requirements for challenging my business ownership. Victoria had apparently been consulting with lawyers about the possibility of filing claims based on family financial contributions to my education and career development. While their research revealed that they had no legitimate legal grounds for ownership claims, the fact that they had explored this option was deeply disturbing. But that was just the beginning. I was about to discover that my family's interest in my business was part of a much larger and more sinister pattern of behavior that would shake my understanding of everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me. The next revelation would make their demands for partnership stakes seem almost innocent in comparison. Have you ever had that moment when you realized the people closest to you were not who you thought they were? When everything you believed about your family suddenly made sense in the worst possible way? Because what I was about to uncover would explain years of subtle manipulation and control that I had never recognized as abuse. Make sure you stay tuned, because this story is about to take a turn that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family loyalty and trust. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source: my office manager, Sarah. She had been working late one evening, organizing patient files, when she noticed something odd about the insurance billing patterns. Several patients had been coming to the clinic for routine checkups, but their insurance claims showed treatments and procedures that we had never performed. Sarah brought this to my attention immediately, and what we discovered sent chills down my spine. Someone had been systematically filing fraudulent insurance claims using my clinic's provider information. The fake claims were sophisticated, involving real patient information, but fabricated treatments and inflated billing codes. The amounts were carefully calculated to stay below the thresholds that typically trigger insurance company investigations. Whoever was behind this scheme understood medical billing systems intimately and had access to our patient database. My first instinct was to assume we had been hacked, or that a staff member was involved in the fraud. We immediately contacted our IT security company and began a comprehensive audit of our computer systems. What they found was even more disturbing than a simple data breach. The fraudulent claims were being filed from computers that had legitimate access to our systems, and the access patterns indicated someone with administrative privileges. The security investigation revealed that additional user accounts had been created in our practice management software without my knowledge or authorization. These phantom accounts had been used to access patient records, generate false billing codes, and submit fraudulent claims to multiple insurance companies over a period of 8 months. The total amount of fraudulent billing exceeded $200,000. When we traced the IP addresses associated with the fraudulent activities, my world collapsed. The illegal access was coming from my parents' home computer, Victoria's laptop, and Marcus's desktop computer. My own family had been using my clinic as their personal money laundering operation, systematically defrauding insurance companies while putting my medical license and entire career at risk. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. My father had apparently been the mastermind of the operation, using his background in business management to orchestrate the scheme. Victoria had been responsible for creating fake patient documentation, using her artistic skills to forge signatures and medical forms. Marcus had helped by providing technical support and managing the digital aspects of the fraud. The most devastating revelation was that their partnership demands had been a calculated attempt to legitimize their ongoing criminal activities. By securing official ownership stakes in the clinic, they would have gained legal protection for their access to patient records and billing systems. Their constant pressure for me to hire them in official positions would have provided additional cover for their fraudulent activities. I spent 3 sleepless nights reviewing bank records, insurance correspondence, and billing reports with my lawyer and accountant. The scope of the fraud was staggering. My family had been filing false claims for expensive procedures like MRI interpretations, surgical consultations, and specialist referrals that our clinic was not even equipped to perform. They had created fictitious follow-up appointments, phantom emergency visits, and imaginary treatment plans. The most sophisticated aspect of their scheme involved creating fake patient identities using real personal information obtained from legitimate patients. They would take information from patients who visited the clinic for simple checkups and create elaborate medical histories involving chronic conditions and ongoing treatments. These fictional patients would then receive expensive ongoing care that existed only on paper. When I confronted my parents with the evidence, their reaction was more shocking than the crime itself. Instead of expressing remorse or attempting to deny their involvement, my father actually seemed proud of their operation. He claimed they had been conducting a victimless crime that only affected wealthy insurance companies who could afford the losses. According to his twisted logic, they were simply redistributing wealth from corporate entities to hardworking families. My mother's response was to blame me for creating the opportunity for their criminal activities. She claimed that if I had been more generous with family financial support, they would never have needed to find alternative income sources. She suggested that their fraud was actually my fault because I had refused to share my success with the people who had raised me. Victoria's defense was even more outrageous. She claimed that their activities were not technically stealing because insurance companies routinely overcharge customers and deny legitimate claims. She portrayed their fraud as a form of social justice that corrected systemic problems in the healthcare industry. She also suggested that I was being hypocritical because all successful doctors find ways to maximize their insurance billing. Marcus took a different approach, claiming that he had been manipulated by our parents and had not fully understood the illegal nature of their activities. He portrayed himself as an innocent victim who had been coerced into providing technical assistance. However, the evidence showed that he had been actively involved in creating fake patient accounts and had received direct payments for his participation. The most chilling moment came when my father suggested that I should simply accept their activities and find ways to legitimize their ongoing access to the billing systems. He proposed that we could restructure their partnership proposal to include official roles that would justify their involvement in patient records and insurance claims. He seemed to believe that making their criminal activities official would somehow make them acceptable. When I threatened to report their activities to the authorities, my family's reaction revealed the true depth of their entitlement and manipulation. They accused me of betraying family loyalty and suggested that turning in family members to law enforcement was a violation of everything they had taught me about family values. They claimed that real families protect each other rather than involving outside authorities in private matters. My mother actually cried and claimed that reporting their activities would destroy our family forever. She painted herself as a victim who would be devastated by criminal charges and suggested that I would be responsible for ruining her reputation and future. She begged me to find a way to handle the situation privately without involving law enforcement or insurance companies. The pressure campaign that followed was intense and relentless. Extended family members began calling to express concern about family unity and the importance of handling problems internally. My grandmother wrote emotional letters about the devastating impact that criminal charges would have on the family's reputation. Even family friends began reaching out with suggestions for private mediation and conflict resolution. But I had reached my breaking point. The people I had spent my entire life trying to please and impress had been systematically destroying everything I had worked to build. They had put my medical license, my business, and my entire future at risk to fund their lifestyle. Worst of all, they had shown no remorse and continued to demand that I protect them from the consequences of their criminal behavior. The decision to contact the authorities was one of the hardest I had ever made, but it was also one of the clearest. I could not continue to enable their criminal activities or allow them to use my clinic as their personal fraud operation. The time had come to choose between family loyalty and moral integrity, and the choice was surprisingly easy once I understood the real nature of the people I was protecting. The morning I walked into the FBI field office with boxes of evidence felt like stepping into an alternate reality. Agent Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in healthcare fraud investigations, listened patiently as I explained how my own family had been using my medical practice to defraud insurance companies. She assured me that family-based fraud cases were more common than most people realized, but the sophistication of my family's operation was particularly concerning. The FBI investigation moved quickly once they had access to our computer systems and billing records. Within 2 weeks, they had traced the fraudulent activities across multiple insurance companies and identified the full scope of the criminal enterprise. The final tally was even more shocking than my initial estimates: over $400,000 in fraudulent claims filed across 18 months of criminal activity. Agent Martinez explained that my family had been operating what law enforcement classified as an organized healthcare fraud ring. The systematic nature of their activities, the multiple participants, and the sophisticated methods they used elevated their crimes from simple billing fraud to federal racketeering charges. Each family member faced potential prison sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The arrest warrants were executed simultaneously at each family member's residence to prevent evidence destruction and ensure that none of the conspirators could warn the others. I was not present for the arrests, but Agent Martinez called me afterward to confirm that all 4 family members had been taken into custody without incident. She also informed me that they had seized computers, financial records, and other evidence from each location. The local news coverage of the arrests was extensive and devastating for my family's reputation. The story of a respected local business family running a healthcare fraud operation captured public attention and dominated headlines for weeks. Victoria's art gallery immediately canceled her upcoming show. Marcus lost several music students, and my parents were forced to resign from their positions on various community boards. The most difficult aspect of the criminal proceedings was testifying against my own family members. During the preliminary hearings, I had to explain how I had discovered their fraudulent activities and describe the evidence I had provided to investigators. My family members stared at me with expressions ranging from hatred to disbelief as I detailed their criminal activities for the court record. Victoria's lawyer attempted to portray her as a victim of family manipulation who had been coerced into participating in activities she did not understand. However, the evidence clearly showed that she had been instrumental in creating forged documents and had received substantial payments for her participation. Her artistic skills had been essential for creating convincing fake patient signatures and medical forms. Marcus's defense strategy focused on his alleged mental health issues and claims that he had been manipulated by older family members. His lawyer argued that he had been suffering from depression and anxiety that impaired his judgment and made him vulnerable to coercion. However, the prosecution demonstrated that he had been an active and willing participant who had profited significantly from the fraud. My parents' lawyers took an aggressive approach, attempting to shift blame onto me for creating opportunities for fraud through poor security practices. They suggested that my family had simply been taking advantage of vulnerabilities in my clinic's systems, and that I bore responsibility for failing to prevent their activities. This strategy backfired when the evidence showed their deliberate and sophisticated methods. The financial impact of their crimes extended far beyond the stolen insurance money. My clinic faced massive legal bills, increased insurance premiums, and potential liability claims from affected insurance companies. Several legitimate insurance relationships were terminated due to the fraudulent activity associated with my provider credentials. The reputation damage threatened to destroy everything I had worked to build. The stress of the criminal proceedings also took a severe toll on my personal health and well-being. I struggled with sleep disorders, anxiety attacks, and depression as I processed the betrayal and watched my family face criminal prosecution. The guilt over reporting my own family members was overwhelming, despite knowing that I had made the only ethical choice available. The plea negotiations revealed just how little remorse my family members felt for their crimes. My father's initial plea proposal included demands that I provide character references and financial support for their legal defense. He seemed to believe that family loyalty required me to help minimize their criminal penalties, even though they had put my entire career at risk. Victoria's plea negotiations were particularly bitter, because she continued to claim that her activities had been motivated by financial need caused by my selfishness. She suggested that if I had been more generous with family financial support, she would never have needed to find alternative income sources. Her complete inability to accept responsibility for her criminal behavior was both frustrating and heartbreaking. Marcus eventually agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges, providing detailed information about how the fraud scheme had been organized and implemented. His testimony revealed that the criminal activities had been planned for over 2 years, beginning shortly after my clinic opened and became financially successful. The most devastating revelation from Marcus's cooperation was that my family had been planning to expand their fraud operations to include other local medical practices. They had identified several small clinics with similar security vulnerabilities and had begun researching their billing systems and patient databases. My clinic had been their testing ground for a much larger criminal enterprise. My mother's final plea hearing was the most emotional moment of the entire process. She read a prepared statement claiming that she had been motivated by love for her family and concern about their financial security. She portrayed herself as a devoted mother who had made poor choices while trying to help her children succeed. However, she never acknowledged the impact of her crimes on my business or expressed genuine remorse for her actions. The sentencing phase provided some measure of justice, but it could not undo the damage that had been done to my life and career. My father received the harshest sentence, 8 years in federal prison and full restitution for the fraudulent claims. Victoria and my mother each received 5 years, while Marcus's cooperation earned him 3 years, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. The civil lawsuits filed by insurance companies added another layer of complexity to an already difficult situation. While I was ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing, the legal costs and time investment required to defend against these claims were substantial. Several insurance companies demanded enhanced security measures and ongoing audits before agreeing to continue coverage for my clinic. The personal cost of seeking justice was enormous, but I had no regrets about my decision to report their criminal activities. Protecting my family's crimes would have made me complicit in their fraud and would have violated my ethical obligations as a healthcare provider. The choice between family loyalty and moral integrity had been difficult, but ultimately, there was only one acceptable option. Rebuilding my life and practice after my family's criminal conviction was like learning to walk again after a devastating accident. Everything I had taken for granted about family relationships, personal security, and professional reputation had to be reconstructed from the ground up. The process was painful and exhausting, but it also became an opportunity to create the life I actually wanted rather than the one I thought I was supposed to want. The first challenge was restoring my clinic's reputation within the medical community and with patients. Many people struggled to understand how I could not have known about the fraud happening within my own practice. I spent months meeting with insurance representatives, medical board investigators, and community leaders to explain the situation and demonstrate the enhanced security measures I had implemented. The enhanced security protocols became a model for other small medical practices dealing with similar vulnerabilities. I worked with cybersecurity consultants to develop comprehensive systems for protecting patient data and monitoring billing activities. The new systems were expensive and time-consuming to implement, but they provided peace of mind that I had never experienced before. Patient trust was gradually restored through consistent quality care and transparent communication about the situation. I held community meetings to explain what had happened and answer questions about patient data security. Many patients expressed support and understanding, recognizing that I had been a victim of my family's crimes rather than a willing participant. The financial recovery took nearly 3 years of careful budgeting and strategic planning. The legal costs, restitution payments, and system upgrades had depleted my savings and required significant loans to maintain operations. However, the clinic's patient base remained strong, and revenue gradually increased as word spread about our enhanced security measures and commitment to ethical practices. The most significant change was my approach to personal relationships and family connections. The betrayal by my biological family had been devastating, but it also freed me from toxic relationship patterns that had been limiting my personal growth for years. I began developing what I came to think of as my chosen family people who supported my goals and values rather than undermining them. Sarah, my office manager, became one of my closest friends and most trusted advisors. Her loyalty during the crisis and her ongoing support for the clinic's mission made her feel more like family than my biological relatives ever had. We developed a partnership approach to running the clinic that gave her significant input on operational decisions and profit-sharing opportunities. Dr. Amanda Foster, a physician who had offered support during the criminal proceedings, became both a professional colleague and personal mentor. She had faced her own family challenges related to her medical career and understood the unique pressures of being a successful woman in a family that did not support professional achievements. Our friendship provided perspective and encouragement during the darkest periods of recovery. The local medical community rallied around my practice in ways that surprised and touched me deeply. Colleagues referred patients, provided consultation support, and included me in professional development opportunities. The experience taught me that professional relationships based on mutual respect and shared values could be more supportive than family relationships based solely on biological connections. 3 years after the criminal convictions, I received an unexpected phone call from Marcus requesting a meeting. He had been released from prison early for good behavior and claimed he wanted to make amends for his role in the fraud scheme. Against my better judgment, and despite advice from friends and my lawyer, I agreed to meet him at a neutral location with my attorney present. Marcus appeared genuinely remorseful and provided additional details about how the fraud scheme had been organized. He explained that our father had been planning similar operations against other medical practices and that my reporting had prevented much more extensive criminal activities. He also revealed that the family had been researching ways to challenge my business ownership through fraudulent claims about their financial contributions to my education. The most shocking revelation from this meeting was that my family's criminal activities extended far beyond healthcare fraud. Marcus disclosed that they had been running multiple financial schemes, including tax fraud, identity theft, and credit card fraud operations. My clinic had been just one component of a much larger criminal enterprise that had been generating income for years. This information explained many things about my family's lifestyle and financial behavior that had never made sense before. Their ability to maintain expensive hobbies and social activities without apparent income sources, their resistance to discussing financial matters, and their sophisticated understanding of business and legal systems all suddenly made sense within the context of ongoing criminal activities. Marcus's cooperation led to additional criminal charges against our parents and Victoria, extending their prison sentences significantly. While this provided some measure of additional justice, it also confirmed my decision to maintain complete separation from my biological family. These were not people who had made poor choices under pressure. They were career criminals who had been exploiting my success as part of their ongoing operations. The final resolution came when I received full restitution for my legal costs and business losses from the asset forfeiture proceedings against my family. The government had seized their homes, cars, and other assets purchased with proceeds from their criminal activities. While the money could not undo the emotional damage or lost opportunities, it did provide financial stability for continuing to grow my practice. Today, my clinic serves over 3,000 patients and employs 12 staff members who feel more like family than my biological relatives ever did. We have established a scholarship fund for medical students from low-income families, and I regularly speak at conferences about healthcare fraud prevention and family-based financial crimes. The experience that nearly destroyed my career has become a platform for helping others avoid similar situations. The most important lesson from this experience is that family loyalty should never require accepting criminal behavior or sacrificing personal integrity. Real family members support each other's legitimate goals and celebrate each other's successes rather than exploiting them for personal gain. Sometimes, the family you choose is more important than the family you were born into. Looking back, I realized that my family's betrayal was actually a gift that freed me from toxic relationships and unrealistic expectations about family obligations. The people in my life now are there because they want to be, not because they feel entitled to share in my success or manipulate me for their benefit. I want to know, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing the right thing? How did you handle situations where family members tried to take advantage of your success or hard work? Share your stories in the comments below, because I think we all need to hear that we are not alone in dealing with these difficult family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family betrayal and building the life you actually want. Share this video with anyone who might be struggling with toxic family relationships or manipulation disguised as love. Your support means everything to me, and I am grateful for this community we have built together. Remember that you deserve relationships based on mutual respect and genuine support, not obligation and manipulation. Sometimes, the greatest act of self-love is walking away from people who cannot celebrate your success without trying to profit from it. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the strength to choose integrity over convenience in your own family relationships.